A phone ringing at 2 in the morning is one of the only sounds we all agree on. Nobody's ever thought, oh, good news. Everybody has the same half second where you're not awake yet and your body already is, because a phone at 2 in the morning means somebody died, or somebody's drunk, or somebody's got the wrong number. Those are the three options. And every single person in tonight's stories would have taken any of them. Welcome back to Vespertine. 3 stories about picking up. Here we go. I unplugged the phone from the wall. I want you to picture that. The cord in my hand, the socket on the wall, nothing connecting them. And at 14 minutes past 2 in the morning, it rang. I moved into a flat on my own when I was 28, after a breakup, in a building that was old but nice. And it had a landline already installed, which even then was strange. This was maybe 2011. But it was included, and I was broke, and I figured I'd use it for my mom. The first call came about 3 weeks in. It was 2:14 in the morning. I know that because the phone was in the hall, and the microwave was in my eye line from the hall, and the microwave said 2:14, and I stood there and looked at it while the phone rang. And I picked up. Because you do. That's the thing people don't understand when they ask me why I picked up. It's a phone. Picking it up isn't a decision. It's a reflex you learned as a child. And there was nobody there. Not silence. There was a line. There was that open line sound, that hiss, and something underneath it that could have been a room. And I said hello about 4 times, and then I put it down. Wrong number. Obviously. I went back to bed slightly annoyed. Next night, 2:14, it rang again. And this time I listened for longer because I was cross. And after about 30 seconds, somebody said my name. Very quiet and quite far from the phone, like they were across a room from the handset. And I said, "Who is this?" And they didn't answer. And I put it down, and I unplugged it, and I went to bed with my heart going. And I told myself it was a prank. Kids. Somebody with a phone book. But here's the thing that started to eat me over the next few nights. It knew things. I'd pick up, and the voice would say something ordinary about my day, not threatening. That's what I can't get across. It said things like, "You got the blue ones." And I'd bought blue towels that afternoon. It said, "You left the window." And I had. Once, it said, "He called you again." And my ex had called me that evening, and I hadn't told a single person. And it never asked for anything. It never threatened me once in 6 weeks. It just reported back. Like it was making conversation, like it was catching up. I did all the sensible things. I called the phone company, and they told me there had been no incoming calls to that line at those times. None. Their records had my line as basically unused. A couple of calls to my mom, and that was it. I called the police, and they were nice, and they told me to change my number, and I said I'd unplugged the phone, and it still rang, and I watched the officer's face do the thing where a person stops taking you seriously. I unplugged it. I want to come back to that because that's the center of the whole thing for me. I took the cord out of the socket. It rang at 2:14. I stood in the hall with the cord in my hand and looked at a phone that was not connected to anything, ringing. And then my mobile rang, which was in my other hand. And the number on the screen was my own number, my landline, calling my mobile from a phone with no cord in it. That's the night I got out. I put a coat on over pajamas, and I sat in an all-night cafe until it got light, and I didn't answer either of them again. I found the thing about the old tenant afterwards, and I'll be honest with you, it's less than people want. There was a man who'd had the flat before me. He'd lived there about 9 years, and he died in it. Not violently, he just died. He was 70-something, and he had a heart attack in the kitchen, and nobody found him for a while. And the estate agent, who I ambushed at her desk and who was extremely uncomfortable, told me that he used to ring the office, a lot, at night, complaining about noise from a flat that was empty. He'd lived alone for 9 years, and I think about that more than I think about the voice, because he wasn't scary. Whoever that was, they weren't trying to frighten me. They were telling me about my day. They were doing what you do when you live alone and somebody finally picks up. I moved out at the end of the month, and the last thing I did, and this was stupid, and I don't know why I did it, was I plugged the phone back in before I handed the keys over. Somebody lives there now. The machine recorded a message at 3:33 in the morning in my voice describing something that had not happened yet. And the next day it happened, exactly the way the tape said, right down to the sandwich. I had an answering machine in 2004 because I'm the sort of person who doesn't throw things out. A proper one, with a cassette. I came in from work one night, about 11, and the light was blinking. One message. And it was me. My voice on my machine saying, "You're going to spill the coffee on the gray chair tomorrow. Don't worry about it." And I stood in my hallway with my coat still on, and I listened to that 4 times. And then I checked the machine, and the timestamp said 3:33 that morning, which was a time I was definitely asleep in the next room. And the obvious answer is that somebody was in my flat at 2:30 in the morning doing an impression of me into my own answering machine. And I know how that sounds as a comfort, but genuinely, that was my preferred explanation. I checked the locks, I checked the windows, I had a very rational hour. The next day, I spilled coffee on the gray chair. And I want to be precise, because everybody says, well, you did it because you were thinking about it. And I've thought about that for 20 years. I don't think so. I wasn't holding a coffee near the chair and thinking about the message. I was carrying a mug from the kitchen, and the phone went, and I turned, and my elbow went into the doorframe, and it went all over the chair. It was an accident. It had a cause. The cause was the phone ringing. And I stood there, looking at a wet gray chair, and I felt the bottom go out of everything. So I did what any sensible man does, which is I sat up the next night and watched the machine. At 3:33 in the morning, the machine turned itself on. No ring. That's the part. The phone did not ring. The machine clicked, and the little red light came on, and the tape started turning, and my voice came out of the speaker, and it said, "Tomorrow, you're going to get the call about your uncle. Sit down first." I got the call about my uncle at about 2:10 the following afternoon. I did not sit down first. I took the cassette out and I put it in a drawer, and the next night the machine had a cassette in it. A different one, or the same one, I genuinely don't know, and I'm aware how that sounds. I threw it in a bin outside a chip shop 3 streets away, and I came back and there was a tape in my machine. That's the point where I stopped being scientific about it. The messages went on for about 2 weeks. Small stuff mostly. Weather, what I'd have for dinner, the neighbor's car. And here's the thing that made me leave, and it's not the scary one, it's the sad one. The voice was always kind. Every single message. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Sit down first. It was looking after me. The last one I heard in that flat said, "You're going to leave tonight. That's all right. I'd leave too." I packed a bag. I drove to my sister's at midnight, and halfway there, my mobile buzzed, and it was a voicemail. And I sat in a lay-by on the A road at 1 in the morning, and I listened to my own voice tell me, "You're in the lay-by past the garage. There's a lorry coming. Wait for it before you pull out." I waited. There was a lorry. I never went back to that flat. My sister's husband and a mate of his went and got my things, and they said the machine was gone. Not smashed, not unplugged, gone. The cable was there, coiled up neat on the table, and the machine wasn't on the end of it. And the police report, because I did file one, eventually, for the insurance on the stuff. lists one item stolen from that flat: an answering machine. Nothing else. No TV, no laptop, nothing. Somebody broke into a flat and took a 20-year-old answering machine and coiled the cable up. I've had a long time to think about what that was. And here's where I've landed, and I don't like it. It never once got anything wrong. 2 weeks of messages, and every single one was true. So whatever it wasn't guessing. It could see the next day. And it used my voice to tell me. Out of everything it could have sounded like, it picked mine. Which means it wanted me to listen. Which means it wanted me to be okay. I still don't know if that thing was haunting me or looking after me. And the honest answer, which I've never said out loud before, is that some nights I miss it. Because it was the only thing in 20 years that ever told me to sit down first. There was a voice underneath the hold music, and it was describing what I was doing. Not what I'd done, what I was doing while I was doing it, about half a second behind me. I rang my bank's out-of-hours line at about 11 at night because a payment had gone wrong. That's it. That's the whole setup. The most boring reason anyone's ever ended up in one of these. You know the hold music. Everybody knows the hold music. It's the same 4 bars, and a woman telling you your call is important, and then the 4 bars again. I was maybe 10 minutes in, doing the dishes with the phone on speaker on the counter, when I heard something under it. At first I thought it was a bad line. Then I thought it was a radio somewhere in the mix. You sometimes get bleed on old lines. So I picked the phone up and put it to my ear and turned the volume up. And it was a person, talking very quietly under the music, and it said, "She's turned it up." I want to be really clear about the timing, because it's the whole thing. It didn't say it, and then I turned it up. I turned it up, and about half a second later, it said it. It was behind me. It was narrating. So I stood completely still in my kitchen. And it said, "She's stopped." And I looked around the room, which is exactly what you do, and it said, "She's looking for me." And I put the phone on the counter and I backed away from it. And from the little speaker, under 4 bars of hold music, quiet as anything, it said, "She's put it down." And then the hold music stopped. And there was a click. And a voice said, "Thank you for holding. You're through to the out-of-hours team." And it was my voice. Not like my voice. Mine. The one I hate hearing on videos. And it was doing the customer service thing. It was bright. It was helpful. It had that little upward lift at the end. I hung up, obviously, and it rang back within about 4 seconds. Same number on the screen, my bank's actual number, the one printed on the actual card that was in my actual hand. I didn't answer. It rang for a long time. And then I made the decision that I think about constantly, which is that I took my coat and I left. I didn't take my phone. It was still on the counter ringing when I closed the door, and I stood outside my own house at 11:30 at night with no phone and no plan. And that's when the phone box down the road started ringing. There's a red phone box at the end of my road. It's one of those ones with a plant in it, or a defibrillator, or nothing. You know the ones. It's decorative. It hasn't been a phone in years. It was ringing. And I want to tell you that I ran. I stood on my own street and I looked at that phone box ringing in the dark, and the thing that made me walk toward it wasn't bravery, it was manners. That's the honest truth. 41 years of being taught that a ringing phone is a person who needs something. I opened the door and I picked it up. And my own voice said, "Don't look behind you, you'll like it less." So I hung up. And I did look behind me because of course I did. And there was nothing there. An empty street, parked cars, a cat. Nothing at all. And I've thought about that for 6 years. That it told me not to, and there was nothing there. And I still don't know if that means it was lying, or if it means I was 1 second early. I went to my sister's. I got a new number, new phone, new bank, the lot. And nothing has ever happened again. 6 years, not once. Which people always find reassuring, and I don't. Because nothing ever explained why it stopped. The same way nothing ever explained why it started. I did try once. I called the bank's actual line in the daytime, like a normal person, and I asked them very carefully whether they'd had any reports of problems on the out-of-hours number. And the woman was lovely, and she checked, and she said no. And then she said the number I'd rang that night wasn't one of theirs. I read it off the card to her, the card in my hand, and she said, "That's not our number. That's not any of our numbers. We've never had that number. It's printed on the card. It's embossed on it. I've still got it." So somebody printed a number on a bank card, and the number rang, and something answered it. And I don't have an ending for that. I've got a card in a drawer with a number on it that doesn't exist. And no, I have never dialed it again. That's 3. And you know the funny thing about all 3 of these? Not one of them was threatened. Nobody got told they were going to die. They got told about towels and coffee and lorries. Something out there is very interested in the small stuff. I don't know what that is, and I like it a lot less than a threat. If you've got one of these, put it in the comments. I read all of them. Sleep well, if you can.